Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for today's class. We're going to look into the introduction to the manufacturing process. This is mainly going over the manufacturing process for biologics. Let's start talking about the manufacturing process related to mammalian cell culture techniques that we use in the pharmaceutical companies. So allow me first to go over the content of the slide before we will go over some, I would say, illustrated slide as well, and going over the flowchart of the manufacturing process. Now, drug manufacturing is the process of industrial scale synthesis of pharmaceutical drugs by pharmaceutical companies. Usually, we start in a lab and we start creating a molecule, a synthetic molecule. Up to 70% of the drugs that we have are synthetic molecules that are, again, the exact copy of the same chemical entity that we can find in nature. However, in nature, the production is not always exact, and we always have it, and we don't control the excipients neither. But when we are going to isolate an active pharmaceutical ingredient or an API, and then we can make it synthetically in a lab, we will be able to now make it in a way that we will upscale the production to the industrial scale. So I use the term upscale. It's when we are passing from the research and development lab to the industrial scale production. And obviously at any step, it can be, of course, at the it may start in again the research and development labs. We are going to make or synthesize a molecule. We are going to use pharmacopoeia standards in order to test the fact that yes, this product is exactly what it should be, and we are going to make sure about its quality as well. So these are going to be done through tests and standards that we can find in pharmacopoeias, such as USP. Now, the process of drug manufacturing can be broken down into a series of unit operation for tablet manufacturing, such as milling, granulation, coating, tablet pressing, and others. For mammalian cell culture, the one that we're talking today about now, manufacturing such as inoculation of the bioreactor, that I'm going to explain, upstream, and downstream purifications, viral inactivation, and others. So before a drug can be manufactured at any scale, significant work goes into the actual formulation of a drug. Now, formulation development scientists evaluate a compound for uniformity, stability, and many other factors. So for the stability, for example, we also go over several tests. Same thing for the uniformity. Now, after the evaluation phase, a solution must be developed to deliver the drug in its required form, such as a solid, semi-solid, immediate or controlled release, tablet, or capsule. And when we are talking about the solid, of course, this must also be stable. If it's not stable, we can now put that in different containers. And those containers, they may now have different formats, like an ampoule, like again, a tablet, like a capsule. We can also use extended release or controlled release tablets where we have a meshwork in the structure, and we add the drug or the API into the meshwork, and when the meshwork is absorbed, or we just swallow that extended release or controlled release tablet, for example, the drug will be diffusing outside of the meshwork upon, I would say, being humidified or being exposed to a type of fluid. So once the extended release tablet is exposed to a fluid, In this case, the drug can now start to diffuse, and the diffusion of the drug outside of those extended-release tablets will now take some time, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours, depending on the physicochemical properties of that meshwork that we are using in order to make the tablet. Now, a tablet that can also be coated, and in this case, we are talking about coating as well. So these are all examples of different steps in the production of drugs. Now, in module 3 of the CTD, or Common Technical Document, as per ICH M4, when we are going to prepare, again, a package, a CTD package, for the registration of a product, we are going to complete different modules, module 1 through module 5, based on ICH M4. Module 1 content is always coming from the requirement, are based on the requirements of any specific regulatory authority in each country. So, for example, for Canada, module 1 is the one that is required by Health Canada. The structure is given to us by Health Canada, but module 2 through module 5, they're all as per ICH guidelines. In module 3, we are going to add information related to the quality and stability, of course, and any other types of tests that we have been using in order to characterize, in order to make it stable, in order to, looking into the quality of the product. So when we talk about the module 3, manufacturing information may be presented within narratives, reaction schemes, and tables. Now, let's go back to the pharmacopoeia standards and manufacturing process. We know that we are making some products, like here we are having a manufacturing process where we start from dispensing, going through the granulation of the compound, the solid, for example, drying of the compound, and then milling it, mixing this with some excipients, and then to do the compression in order for having, for example, capsules in the format of capsules. And then those capsules are going to be again poured into a coating machine where we are going to see a circular, for example, it depends on the type of capsules, but usually we have again the capsules that are in a type of cylinder which is turning, and while it's turning you also have a diffuser of the coating that is going to spray the coating on the capsules that are turning in that cylinder, which is turning as well. So, of course, after some type of process, it may be heating, it may be just aeration, for example, we're going to find the final product, which is a coated capsule. So this is, in a nutshell, the manufacturing process. But now, how we are going to make sure that the drug that we made is exactly the drug that we are again saying that we made it. So for this, we will need, of course, to use different pharmacopoeia standards in order to test the quality, of course, and of the product. This is why we always talk about different pharmacopoeia, such as USP, Japanese pharmacopoeia, European pharmacopoeia, British pharmacopoeia, etc. And of course, Chinese pharmacopoeia as well. Now here we talk about the typical pharmaceutical manufacturing operations. So if we are making liquids, of course we have to go through the dispensing, mixing, filtration, CCS filling, and packaging. If you're looking into the solid orals, tablets, or capsules, we talk about dispensing, blending, dosage formulation, compression or filling, coating, polishing, and then packaging. If we talk about the drug device like nasal sprays, nebulizers, we talk about dispensing, mixing, device filling, device assembly, packaging, or when we talk about biological or device products, we talk about manufacturing of API, filtration, drug product manufacturing, and filling, and to finish the product. So these are all different manufacturing operations. Now Each of these operations, of course, they are, first of all, they have standards, they have equipments, they must be, again, validated, the equipments, they must have procedures, people must be trained on those, they must be cleaned, we have procedures and regulations for cleaning and sanitation as well. We also have, again, different regulations for the maintenance of these equipments as well. And obviously, the process itself is also documented so that we know that through the standard operating procedures and through the batch control activities, we'll be able to document the fact that a product has been following the proper manufacturing operation and that the final product that we are getting did pass the tests based on the UPS standards or pharmacopoeia standards in any country where, again, this applies. Now, let's talk about the process and formulation and dosage forms. Okay, so here we have tablets, we have extended-release tablets, we have creams, we have ointments, we have solid dosage, we have powder as well, and we have some type of nebulizers or sprayers as well. Now, let's talk about these products in the next slides. First of all, if the product in any of the previously seen, I would say, final products is based on biologics, and we are talking about mammalian cell culture, we're going to follow usually this manufacturing process. So how it works? Again, I'm going over a general explanation. I'm not going to look into a specific vaccine or a specific product. Overall, we may use human cell, we may use an animal cell as well, but here we talk about a human cell, and here we talk about chromosomes, and then we can now look into the DNA. DNAs, of course, allow us to have genes. These are sections or, sections of the DNA that are coding for an mRNA that once it will be made, it will allow the cell to make the proteins. The protein is going to have some therapeutic effects, like immunoglobulins, for example. So here we're talking about the steps, and the first step here is the DNA synthesis, and then we are going to create a recombinant DNA. How we do this? We are going to look into the gene of interest in the DNA through different types of, enzymatic activities and biochemical procedures. We are going to isolate the gene that is coding for the mRNA that once it will be translated will give us an active protein for a specific disease, I would say, or a treatment. We are going to insert that gene into a plasmid in a bacteria. So now we do have different ways to look into if the gene has been inserted into a plasmid. We have also ways of bacteria. We also have ways or techniques in order to kill bacteria that are not having inserted the gene of interest. Anyways, at the end of this procedure, we are going to be able to see plasmids within bacteria, and those plasmids are having the gene that is coding from mRNA that will allow the mammalian cell, to produce that protein. Now, again, I gave you the example of an immunoglobulin. It can be, again, anything, but here we just talk anything about any biologic, but here we are talking about, I just give you an example of immunoglobulins. Now, what happens is that the plasmid, it will be, of course, added into the bacteria. But now we may have different host cells that are going to receive that bacteria. Now we can have plants, we can have yeast, we can also use viruses. How we do that? That's because a virus has the ability, of course, it may have enveloped or non-enveloped. We have viruses that are having RNA or DNA or reverse RNA or reverse DNA. Those bacteria, those viruses, they infect the bacteria or their host cell, and they are going to insert, in majority of cases, depends on the virus as well, but for example, alpha viruses, they have this ability to insert their genome into the genome of their host cell. And if this is the case for humans, for example, of course, we are going to be, again, receive the alpha viruses, and then we are going to see the genome of the virus that will be added into our genome. And of course, not all of the cells, but cells that have been affected by that virus infection. And of course, after the infection, all of those cells are going to be killed by our immune system. But during the time that we have the infection and the virus is producing itself, this is the time when we are going to have some pathologies and signs and symptoms of a disease. Now, coming back to this process, we will see again those plasmids that may now be active, or they are going to be able to produce a specific protein in a mammalian cell. So I'm giving you an example of a mammalian cell here. So here we have cells, mammalian cells, that can produce a protein based on the recombinant DNA that has been added into its genome through a bacterial or viral infection. Now we are going to put those mammalian cells producing, of course, among other proteins, the protein that we want, because this one is a therapeutic protein. We're going to now put that in culture, and we're going to have billions of those mammalian cells that are now expressing our molecule as well. And now we call that a cell bank. So we have a cell bank, and when we have a cell bank, we may do the congelation and to freeze the cells as well to keep them. And then we can now remove, obviously defreeze them, and then in this case we call that thawing, so viral thawing. We are going now to be able to get those mammalian cells. Now what we do is that we are going to put those cells at work. How we do that? We are going to use, of course, different cells from different cell banks. We know that each of those cells, for example, are producing a specific protein. We're going to choose only one type of cell where we would like to produce, I would say, to culture that, so that those cells are going to produce some products that we are going to use as a therapeutic product. We are going to put them in bioreactors. Bioreactors, they have different, they may be small, in this case they're in the labs. They may be at an industrial scale, so those bioreactors may now be in metal, galvanized metal. And then they may again have different formats. In the lab, we use Petri dishes. But when we are looking into, again, the cultivation or culture of the cells, in order to have billions of those cells that will produce the protein that we want them to produce, here we can look into the bioreactors. So here we can see at the step which is called protein production, we see bioreactors in which those cells are growing, they are dividing, and of course they are also multiplying, obviously, and they are also producing the protein among other products that the cell is making. This is why when we go to the next step, we will see at the left bottom side of the slide, we see that we have several steps for the protein purification. This is because we need to purify the protein from, or filter that from other molecules or products that the cell is making. This is why we are going to look into several procedures. Now, if we have been having a transfection, or if we have been using viruses, we will need to use a pH, for example, decrease it or increase it. We need also to, again, I'm saying that in a very, very simple way, but we use pH in order to deactivate the virus and any remaining virus. And then we also use filtration. We also use chromatography, of course, based on the charge or based on the size of the viruses. We can also go through the ultrafiltration, and we can also look into purified bulk filtration. Anyway, these are all different techniques that we use in order to remove the virus from the, again, the product that we got from the, again, bioreactors. So once we have the filtered or purified protein or the filtered liquid, we are now going to look into testing to see if we are having exactly the protein that we needed. Now, if we pass those tests, and if tests allow us to now be sure that we are having the molecules that we needed, so these are the proteins here, we are going to go over the packing. So we are going to add those, again, I would say add those proteins, of course in a liquid, and we are going to add them into some ampoules, for example. Anyways, we are going to end up filling containers. Now, these may be containers, or this can be, for example, syringes or pre-filled syringes, and then we are going to have the final product. So that was, in a nutshell, the manufacturing process based on the mammalian cell culture. Now allow me to talk, of course, in writing, of course, what I explained to you. I'm going to just talk about, again, this process in detail. Master cell banks, I'm going to use the abbreviation MCB. So master cell banks are created with the genomic sequence for protein of interest. Working cell banks, or WCBs, working cell banks, are derived from the MCBs and are used in the manufacturing process that I just explained. Cells are introduced to a growth medium that provides all growth sustaining materials. And the conditions to take into consideration are the following: the temperature, pH, sterility, dissolved oxygen, CO2, nutrients, salts, hormones, cell doubling properties of cell line that are used as well. Now we need to have, of course, a fresh grown medium that will be replaced as the process moves because of the sterility, oxygen level, CO2, nutrients that are being used, the salt, and the hormones as well. Now, mammalian cells that are eukaryotic, we can talk about human embryonic kidney cells like HEK cells. We can also use Chinese hamster ovary cells, or CHO cells. Related to the engineered cells to express a particular molecule of interest, we can talk about the following. So CHO cell genome is well understood, so we can manipulate it. For the protein of interest, cell gene coding must be established early, and genetic material is then inserted into the cell line via a vector. Now, CHO cells are used because of their favorable behavior in cell culture conditions and superior expression of the inserted gene. Now let's talk about and continue with the CHO cells. They are derived from an animal called the Chinese hamster. Now, the most important cell line for biopharmaceutical recombinant protein manufacturing is the CHO, and it's used for antibodies, making recombinant proteins like enzymes and fusion proteins. The benefits of using Chinese hamster ovary cells is that they are highly productive. So, for example, we have 3 to 10 grams per liter. It means that you're going to have 3 grams to 10 grams of these cells, but they are going to, of course, give us up to a liter of product. And then they are easily scalable to high volumes. We can scale them, put them into bioreactors, and they are going to multiply fast. They are stable, and then, of course, they are resistant. Well-characterized safety profile. They are industry proven, and of course we don't need any serum, and it's important because in this case we are not using any animal. Of course, this is a Chinese hamster ovary, but we just use the cells made by culture, so we are not going to add any additional product that is coming from an animal, for example. And of course, it does produce proteins similar to humans. Don't forget that for the proteins, when we are having an mRNA that is going to produce proteins, this protein needs to go over several modifications like splicing as well. And then Chinese hamster ovary does have those properties, and that's why it can produce proteins similar to humans. Of course, if we don't have, again, the final products again used in humans, we can always make different modifications in the lab. Now let's talk about the human embryonic kidney cells. These are derived from an aborted fetus, important cell line for research and pharmaceutical development, because this is used for the protein-protein interactions. used in gene expression experiments. Now, what are the benefits of human embryonic kidney cells? So it's a high transfectability. They have, they are easy to manipulate. They have a high reproducibility. They produce exogenous proteins, and they are good also at propagation of adenoviral vectors. Then they lack key genes and is unable to replicate itself. And of course, they are safer for researchers and patients. Now let's go over the biologic manufacturing process using a cell culture. So let's start by the first process. On the left side on the top, we have a cell bank, and they are in a vial. Now the vial, of course, is in a lab, and it may now be in again a glass vial as well. We will then, of course, use a spinner or shake flask because we need to have those cells that are, of course, in solution. In solution, I'm saying they must be, pending in the solution. They cannot just stagnate. And then we will continue with a cell culture where we are going to use seed bioreactors. These are bioreactors where we have a medium, and in the medium we have the nutrients, we have gases, we have the hormones that we talked about. Again, their material, if they are in a small lab, they are going to be in glass. But when we are going to upscale and we are going to go to the production bioreactor that you see in the middle of the top image on the slide, you will see that we are having again in an industrial production. Now, this production is going to go over, it's going to continue. We're going to have our cells that are producing the protein as well as other cellular products. We are also now going to collect the product from the production bioreactor. And we will always continue to add more medium. So we are going to keep our cells alive by giving them enough nutrients and gases and anything they need. But at the same time, we are putting them at work, and those cells are now producing more and more of the cell products. And those products, they also contain among them the protein that we also want from that, I would say, that collected product. Now, we can now use different techniques in order to clarify what we collect. So we can choose or use centrifugation. We can also use depth filtration. But at the end, we are going to end up having a clarified harvest. Now, what happens with the clarified harvest? We still need to make sure that we don't have any virus or contaminants or anything in the clarified harvest. So what we do, we are going to go over the product capture, where you can see on the left bottom side of the slide, you see that we can use different techniques. This one is the affinity chromatography, for example. And then we can also go through the, again, the spinners again, but this time we are going to change the pH depending on, again, the product that we are using. We can use different tools such as pH, for example, in order to inactivate the virus or viruses that may have, stayed in the clarified harvest. Now, with the change in pHs, sometimes viruses, they can be filtered more easier. Sometimes they are, again, they change their membrane potential or the charge, and then they will now being stained in the chromatography columns, for example. We are going to find different ways to use the pH so that we'll be able to filter the virus. Now, other purification tools are fine purification tools, such as ion exchange chromatography, where we are using again pH, for example, in order to change the polarity or the charge of the viral or sometimes bacterial, if they stayed in the clarified harvest charge, and then they are going to stay in the chromatography column. We can also use, for example, hydrophobic interaction chromatography. But at the end, we are going to end up continuing with the viral filtration, where we will have a clarified harvest, but this time it's a clarified and purified harvest. We will now undergo with the ultrafiltration or diafiltration. These are a purification step used to concentrate and buffer exchange the product. And then we are going to fill I would say the ampoules, for example. So here we talk about formulation bulk fill. So after the ultra filtration and diafiltration, we have the final product, and we are going to add it into containers. Now it may be syringes, it may be again ampoules as well, and we are going to make sure that they are going to be stored in the optimal conditions. Now let's go over several, I would say, names of equipments. We have bioreactors. These are tanks in which the cell culture growth and molecule production takes place and harvest starts. The seed reactor or bioreactor is the tank for which the production bioreactor is inoculated and is used for scaling up the production size. We have wave bags, for example. These are equipment used to scale up cell culture volume based on the manufacturing process. We can also have shake flasks, equipment used to scale up cell culture at lower volumes based on the manufacturing process. We can use laminar flow cabinet. These are unidirectional L-flow cabinet used to manipulate samples in an aseptic or aseptic manner. We have biosafety cabinets. These are containment cabinets used to protect the product, personnel, and the environment. We have spinner flasks where, again, we already showed you they are spinning, I would say, or they are turning or moving the suspensions. We have also agitators. So these are large propeller used in biologics manufacturing tanks. Now here you can see from the top, on top left, a culture flask. You have a spinning flask, number 2. You may have a rotating wall bioreactor. It will depend on what is the best practice in order to do the cultivations. You can have a steered bioreactor, because here, for example, we need a higher level of gas, so we have to steer that suspension. Of course, we have a batch culture. We have a propeller as well, a mixer in that container. We can now add the nutrients and feed the batch culture. In this case, we have a fed batch culture, where we are going to now continue to see more and more production of the cellular products. And then we are going to, of course, continue to feed, but we'll also do what we call a perfusion culture, where we are going to, again, I would say, take out the products that is made. We are now going to, of course, use it in the medium, and then we are going to add more cells. So this is a way that we are going to use this type of perfusion culture, which is a culture like a bioreactor, but we are perfusing cells, and we are, of course, taking the medium as well. So why we do that? We are continuing to give nutrients and gases, of course, to the product, while we are also collecting some products from the cell culture as well. But don't forget that collected liquid, now it has to be purified. It has to be filtered in order to get rid of anything else but the product that we are going to put into our ampoules or into our syringes or other containers. Now we can talk about other equipment such as sparger or DO or CO2. These are used to deliver gases into the tank for use of the cell culture and to control the production bioreactor environment. We have process monitoring sensors. They are sensors for pH, for CO2, for DO, etc. We have vice cell equipments. These are equipments used to determine cell viability. We have overlay filters. These are filters that provide filtered air to pressurize tanks. We pressurize tanks because we would like to increase the amount of the pressure so that it will, the gases that are in the bioreactor are going to penetrate or diffuse in faster, diffuse into the cells faster. Then we have media tank. So it's a tank that has the media. So tanks where the media for cell culture growth is held at the appropriate pressure and temperature. We have harvest tanks. These are tanks in which the harvest broth is held before further processing. We have centrifugation equipment. So these are centrifuges, equipments used to clarify the harvest broth. We have resins. We use them in chromatography. So these are material used to capture and polish antibody molecules of interest. Now, resins may be charged. They may have different sizes. They may have pores with different calibrations, I would say, or diameters. They're all going to be used in order to do the filtration and ultrafiltration so that we will make sure that at the end, what we are going to record or get after the chromatography or using resins, of course, is the product that we are looking for, because that's the one that we made producing by the cell, but we had to purify that. You also have the automation equipment. So this equipment uses software and engineering which is validated to control the manufacturing process. Now, this is a basic cell culture manufacturing step. Of course, you have more steps here, but I chose that because it's much more illustrative now after what we learned so far. So first of all, allow me to tell you that we have the abbreviation. So the abbreviation in this process flow diagram appear to relate to a perfusion culture system used in pharmaceutical production. So these are the following, I would say, interpretation of the abbreviations. DO is a dissolved oxygen. You have PCO2, which is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. You have O2, MFC. This is oxygen mass flow controller. You have air MFC, which is air mass flow controller. You have the pH, which is the potential of hydrogen to measure acidity and alkalinity. Now let's look into this manufacturing steps for basic cell culture. On the left, you have the media. We already understood what is a media. We also have a perfusion rate control. And where from the media, we're going to add that into the perfusion culture with our cells. We are going to use different types of equipments for the pH, for the dissolved oxygen, for the PCO2, etc. And then we are going to collect, of course, again, from the perfusion culture, we are going to collect our product. And the product is going to now end up in the harvest search tank, where we are going to continue the capture and the purifications. And then at the same time, we are going to have multi-batch harvest as well. So what we understand here is that for after the perfusion culture, we have a cell retention device. So the device is not going to allow the cells to pass, but we are going to get the again the product of the cells that we are going to get, and from there we are going to capture that product that we are going to then purify and to use. We also have room classifications. This is as per ISO 14644. So on the right table, you can see the maximum concentration limits or particles per cubic meter. So based on the room classifications, we are going to have clean rooms, and those clean rooms are having different classes. We call those classes 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And those classes, they are, again, as you can see that very well in the table on the right, this means that we are having a maximum concentration limit of particles that are at 1 or at 10 And what does it mean? It means that, for example, if you're having 0.1 mu or micrometer, it means that we are having particles that are extremely small. And we can now have room classifications or clean rooms where we are having, again, less and less airborne particles because they are controlled and classified. So those rooms are designed and constructed and operated in a manner to control the introduction, generation, and retention of particles inside the room. Now, room classification are based on certain factors. Now, is a process is open? Is the process closed? We're talking about the process for the purifications, for example, or for harvesting, etc. What is the risk to the product? If we are having, again, if we are not having a clean room, where is the location of the process, and is it upstream process or downstream process? So here I'm showing you a manufacturing area of a facility. As you can see, you have several sections in this plan. We have, for example, we have section 1, which is the weight and dispense place or room. In for department number 2 or section number 2, we have the solution preparation. In again, section 3, we have logistics corridor. Section 4 is inoculum preparation. Section 5 is central manufacturing suite, and then you have again section 6, which is the final purification, and section 7, which is equipment preparation. So we understand very well that there is a flow of the movements, not of the employees only, but of the product, and in each of these different sections we may have a need for specific I would say specifications for example for the room as well. That's why you can see very well that we start with the weight and dispense in section 1, then we turn to the right, so there is a type of door, so definitely some connection between section 1 and 2. Then the products are, we are going to go to the logistics corridor in 3, and then we will end up in section 4 for the inoculum preparations, and then the central manufacturing suite, which is usually closed, a closed area, is in number 5, section 5, and then we are going to end up by having the final purification and to add the final product into its final container. So this is, in a nutshell, again, a manufacturing area and an example of a manufacturing area. Now, obviously, when we are talking about the content of module 3, where we are dealing with the chemistry, manufacturing, and control, we are going to have documents related to the equipments, to their validations, to the calibration, and then tests that we are going to do based on the USB. We are going to have, again, this type of diagrams or manufacturing areas that we have to have, so the plan of the manufacturing facility. You will also have, again, several types of documents for the sanitation, for the, I would say, the compliance with ISO standards, for the clean room as well. So there are all types of documents that a regulatory affairs professional is going to receive related to the chemistry, manufacturing, and control. These documents are going to be used by an RA professional in order to prepare documents that are going to be added into modules and sub-modules in the CTD module 3. Now, let's continue with the basic cell culture manufacturing steps. Here, we can talk about media production, where we prepare the media with the gases, with the, again, the nutrients, hormones, etc. Then we can talk about the vial thaw, which is removing frozen cells from a cryogenic vial. Then we can have a seed train, and we end up in the production bioreactors. This is what you can see in the picture that it is shown in slide in this slide here. So you have the cell bank of course, and you put that in a spinner or shake flask where you have the media, which is represented in yellow. And then you have seed bioreactors. We call that a seed train. Then we are going to end up in a production bioreactor. And then we are going to go through the centrifugation, the depth filtration, and then we end up, of course, having a clarified harvest. That's what we can see in the list on the left. Then we are going to do the inactivation of viruses. We go through the chromatography. That's what you can see underneath in the same picture at the bottom of the picture. And then you have the flow filtration and the formulation. Now, at the end, with the formulation bulk fill, we have filling of the production into bulk. And we will have the finished into final container closure of this process. So again, the container closure, we will again have different container closures as well. So here, for example, if this is, it may be, for example, I don't know, it can be a vaccine, for example, in this case, or it can be, again, a product, a biological product. It can be in a syringe, it can be in an ampoule, it can be in any type of container that's going to protect, of course, the final product, as well as allowing us to store it, to transport it, and then, of course, to use it. Now, let's talk about the media production. So for the media, which is on the left side of the picture in the slide, it's a blend of materials used to feed a cell culture that regulates cell cycles and is a source of energy for the cells. Obviously, we replace the medium. Obviously, when we replace the medium, we are going to make sure that we are not going to remove any cell. This is why we have cell retention device that you can see in the middle of this picture connected to the perfusion culture. We also have seed bioreactors. So the goal is for this vessel to contain enough cells to be introduced into the production bioreactors. Now, the process monitoring control that we have is the cell viability. We are going to look into ViaCell process or equipment. We also need to measure the dissolved oxygen. We will have to manage and to control the agitation and, of course, the rotation per minute. That if it's again too high, we are going to kill our cells. If it's too low, we are going not to ensure that cells are going to be exposed to enough, I would say, pressure or enough nutrients, for example. So this is again another step in the calibration of the equipment and in, I would say, configuration of the activities. We also have the agitation. We have to do the temperature control, because if you have a lower or higher temperature, we may damage the cells as well. And we also have to monitor the pH, because the pH is also going to affect the polarity, of course, of the amino acids. Hence, they're also going to affect the configuration of some cell receptors of the membranes, proteins on the membranes that are polar and that can change their polarity or their charges based on the pH. So you see, there are so many important and different variables that must be, or conditions that must be controlled, and not just only at the level of the seed bioreactor. Here I just gave you an example of that type of standards that we need to follow. Then we can also talk about the production bioreactor. So it's a final scale-up vessel, and the size is variable, as you can see on the right picture on the right side of the slide. So this is for maintaining the environment for cells to remain productive and healthy. Now, the process monitoring and control is including the following: cell viability, dissolved oxygen, agitation, temperature, pH, titer, and duration. Exactly, very similar to the previous slide. So cells are either adherent or suspended in production bioreactor. It will depend again on the cells, but we want the cells, to stay alive, to produce the product, so that we'll be able to harvest. And harvesting is the next in this manufacturing process, where we are going to begin the clarification or the clarification of the harvest. So beginning of clarifying the cells and cellular debris from harvest material is again what we call clarification and harvest. Clarification of the product or that we are collecting from the bioreactor. Now, some methods in order to do the clarifications and the harvest are the following. We can have centrifugation, we can have depth filtration, we can have microfiltration, or any combination of these. So on the right side, your picture, you can see again the harvest and clarification equipment. Another important process in the manufacturing process of biological products is the viral filtration and inactivation. We already talked about using pH in order to inactivate viruses. Now you can also have at some pHs viruses that are going to get together, and again they are inactive, and it's much easier to filter them and remove them by filtration. Now viral contaminants, if they exist, will be inactivated by lowering the pH within the basic pH of the material, or in some cases by detergents. So we destroy their structure on the membranes. Don't forget that still viruses, they may have envelopes and they may also have membranes, and for some cases by the detergents they can destroy their envelope, their cell envelope, but not their membrane. So it will depend again on which type of virus we're talking about. These are all very specific points in each manufacturing process. We also talked about chromatography, and that was mainly when we're talking about the product capture and the fine purification, as illustrated in the picture at the bottom left side of the slide. So here we talk about the resin chemistry. It consists in collecting the therapeutic molecule and removing any debris or host cell protein. So we use resin chemistry, and we are using chromatography. So the picture on the right side is again a device for the chromatography for this purpose. Now we can talk about the size exclusion chromatography. This is a chromatography technique that allows separation of molecules based on their molecular size. So large biomolecules that do not move through the porous membrane of the colon move with mobile phase to the packed colon. In this case, we are going to, of course, separate different molecules based on their size. We can also have ion exchange chromatography. It's a chromatography technique that allows molecules to bind to a packed resin material which is oppositely charged. This bound molecule can be removed from the resin by either changing the pH or salt concentration of the mobile phase. Now, higher the binding of the molecule to the stationary phase, the higher the salt concentration or change in pH must occur. Here we can talk about the formulation of drug substance and bulk fill, which is the last process in the manufacturing process. So formulation is taking the final active substance and formatting it with any other inactive ingredients such as excipients. So bulk filling is filling the formulated drug substance into a container. It can be a polyester bottle, to be further processed into its container used for administration. So here we can talk about the auto-injectors, vial or syringe, etc. And of course, on the picture on the right side of the slide, you can see one of those equipments that you can use for the bulk filling. Now, the finished product this is what we see here. So now drug product finish is filling the formulated drug substance into its final container for administration. A filling isolator is used to ensure aseptic environment. Now, depending on the type of container closure, the process may contain additional steps. So for vials, for example, it's filling, stoppering, and capping. For syringes, it may again contain filling, sealing, and insert the plunger. Now, filling the drug substance into the final product requires equipment and techniques that ensure sterility and accurate fill weights to ensure patients receive a safe and effective dose of the drug. So I hope that you enjoyed today's lecture related to the manufacturing process for, again, biological products, mainly related to the mammalian cell culture. I wish you all a great day, and thank you so much again for joining me for this lecture.